Welcome to Ground Level Insights. This is a demo of our commercial SaaS platform, which is a monthly subscription platform designed primarily for cannabis retailers, dispensary operators, medical clinic owners, as well as LPs, extraction companies, and other related businesses. When you first log into the platform, what you see on the left-hand side here is a list of locations that you own or operate. In this case, we've randomly selected 8 stores that are part of a bigger portfolio of 12,000 locations that Ground Level Insights tracks across Canada, the US, Germany, and the UK. So we've, as I said, randomly picked 8 stores here. On the top right, what you see are some high-level traffic metrics. So Ground Level Insights is a mobile location data analytics company. And so what we're doing is we are looking at the anonymous movements of consumers' mobile devices. So we don't know who these people are. We just see the movement of unique mobile phones against the stores that we're looking at here. So in this case, 19,278 people have visited my group of 8 stores over the last 1 week period of time. I can change this to month, day, whatever time frequency we want. We can further then break this data down to understand that of the 19,278, 12,146 of them are repeat visitors, meaning that their mobile devices have been in our stores before, versus first-time visitors, meaning these are brand new, unique customers, essentially, that have never visited one of our stores before. And in addition to that, we're able to see what we call the average dwell time, meaning on average, how long are these people spending in my stores? In this case, 22 minutes, as well as the average number of visits per user here. And not only do we see the physical location data in terms of the movements of people into our store environments, we're also able to see what apps are installed on those devices. We break those down into what we call top apps, which are generally social media apps, in this case, WhatsApp, Instagram, and so on, as well as industry-specific cannabis apps. And so the idea here is that you're able to look at this data and infer, marketing ad spend decisions. So in other words, it appears by looking at this that my visitors across my 8 stores are using more weed maps than Leafly. Perhaps I should spend more ad dollars on one than I do the other, by looking at, sort of the makeup of, the people that are actually coming into my stores. In terms of other apps that are on their devices, we categorize those into things like social and communications, games, entertainment, real estate, etc. And lastly, we also are able to see a picture of the demographic data of those 19,000 plus visitors. So the male-female split ratio, as well as the age categorization of the makeup of those of that group of people. So the idea here is that you don't just know how many people are coming in, but we want you to get a picture and an understanding of the demographic makeup of this particular audience or cohort that's coming into your stores. So who are these people? So that's kind of sort of what you get when you first log in on the overview page. The second part of the platform is what we call Map View. And what Map View is a way to further drill down into any one of your stores. So I'll just pick Tweedleaf here in Colorado. And what we do is we pull it up on the map, and then we draw a circle or radius around it, what we call in location language geofence. And we default that to 5 kilometers or 2 miles, and it can be customized, made smaller or bigger from a settings perspective. But this is where we pull social media data into the platform. So currently we have these 4 tools integrated into the platform. And so the idea here is instead of listening to all the conversation on the entire fire hose of Twitter of everybody talking about cannabis, what we're doing is we're narrowing that focus down to this defined geofence area. So if I drop down here on Twitter, what you see is we've listed a bunch of keywords or hashtags here that are relevant to the industry: weed, marijuana, cannabis, CBD, etc. You can customize that list. You can add your own brand names, competitor names, whatever the case might be. Um, and and basically anybody who's tweeting with any of those words or hashtags in them, we see that. And so we pull those tweets in. So these are people who have been tweeting in the last hour. Um, but these aren't just anybody tweeting. These are only people tweeting within this defined radius or geofence around my store. So what you can realize is that these are people who are truly local to your business and not just anybody out there. And so we can further export that list of Twitter handles, pass that over to your marketing team to engage with these local people who are talking about cannabis around your store. And we do the same thing for platforms like YouTube. So these are local posts within the same radius of that store on YouTube and so on. So it's a really powerful way to sort of narrow the social listening exercise across these platforms, to people who are really truly local to your particular stores. Perhaps the most powerful part of our platform is what we call affinity markets. And what this is a way to look at the traffic around my stores, but not just, as we saw on the overview page, the visits to my stores directly, but basically everywhere that the consumer goes in relation to the stores that I own. So, for argument's sake, let's go back to Tweedleaf here in Colorado. And what we're doing here is we pull it up on the map, and then the dots that you see appearing on the map, what we have integrated is direct connections into Google Maps API. And so we can sort businesses by every place type that exists within Google Maps hierarchy of businesses. So in this case, I have it set to bars. And so essentially what we're doing is the orange dots that you see appearing on the maps, these are the most popular bars that people are visiting prior to coming into Tweedleaf in Colorado, or this particular Tweedleaf in Colorado. And the blue dots represent the most popular bars that people are going to after they leave Tweedleaf. So the idea here is we're not just looking at the visits to the business establishment itself. We're looking at the before and after behavior of this particular consumer cohort relative to the store that you own. So unlike when you look at just sort of POS data on its own relative to the store that you might own, you can see transactions, you can see what people are spending, what they're buying, but you don't have a clear picture necessarily of what else these people do. Where else do they go? Where were they before? Where were they after? And that's the gap that we're trying to fill with understanding this. If I scroll down here, you see an actual listing of the 5 most popular bars that people are visiting in proximity to this particular Tweedleaf in Colorado. And we can see the number of visits before, the number of visits after, the average dwell times, and so on. And so if I change this place type to, say, coffee shops, as this is all live data we're looking at, it will refresh and we'll see an updated set of data and locations. And now here you see the most popular coffee shops and so on. And so the idea here of what we're wanting business owners to look at is, if you were to look at this data, let's say over several weeks period of time, to extrapolate it out, you want to look for trends. And so if I just, for example, look at this one page right now and extrapolate it out, you might be able to say, hey, it appears that a lot of my customers at Tweedleaf are also customers of Roscoe's Coffee or Jive's Coffee Lounge. We should consider approaching the owner of those establishments to see if we can set up cross-promotional partnerships, because we obviously have customers in common. And that's not a guess. We have data that's backing up that people who are visiting us are also visiting them. So it's an interesting way to kind of determine affinities of other businesses, non-competitive businesses nearby. Another way to think about this data, if you're not a retail owner operator, is if you're an LP or extraction company, is you might look at this on a much sort of bigger stage or macro level. You don't care about one store necessarily, but you might care about an entire market as you're developing new products for that market. So I've changed the place type here to gyms, but let's say we were to look at this data over an entire quarter or 2 quarters of time, and we were to look at it for all of Colorado and all dispensaries in that market. Well, again, if you allow me to extrapolate here, you might be able to look at this data and say, 28% of everybody who went to a dispensary in Colorado over the last 2 quarters also went to a yoga studio. And so that might be enough data to say to you, hey, we should be developing a yoga branded product for the shelves in that particular market. And so it's a great way to inform product development, much in the same way traditional CPG companies like Coca-Cola would look at data to inform new product development. Or if you're trying to make a decision, should I develop an infused chocolate or an infused beer or an infused coffee or whatever the case might be, you want to look at data to understand where the demand might come from for those types of products. Second to last here is we have what we built under the analytics tab here is a very simple benchmarking tool. And essentially what this is a way to do comparisons on the metrics that we look at in terms of location visits and all of that type of stuff in comparing your different stores against each other. So in this particular case, I own Tweedleaf in Colorado. I also own the Honey Pot up here in Toronto, and I own Madman in New York. And so on the fly, I can compare how my stores are performing on total visits, on average dwell times, on let's say repeats or first-time customers. And I can do this daily, weekly, monthly, whatever sort of time frequency I want to look at. In addition to that, another neat tool that we built in here is that we would never let a customer of ours see their direct competitors' data. That's sort of just a no-no, understood in the industry. But what we do is we've built this little tool that we call City Average. And so what this is doing is we are taking the top 10 stores in your local neighborhood around this particular store, around Tweedleaf in Colorado. And we're creating a blended average of, in this case, repeat visits as a metric. And we show how you are stacking up against the local city average of your competitors, if you will. So that's another neat way to kind of just be able to do a little bit of benchmarking, understand where you sit, sort of in the ecosystem. And lastly, we've built a tool here that we call Trends. And it's really early days. We're still adding a lot more to this. But essentially what Trends does is this is a macro level roll up of all the data that we see as a company. And so I'll start here just by showing the US. But essentially, this is a great tool if you're a government entity, a big LP extraction company, big consulting firms like KPMG, Deloitte, Nielsen, those types of guys, where you want to sort of look at the big picture. And so I've got this set to the US right now. If I take my mouse and move it over here, what you see is a roll up of all of the visits across the entire country. So now we're not looking at just one store or even a couple of stores. We're looking at every store that GroundLevel sees within our system. As I said at the beginning, we track about 12,000 medical clinics and or recreational dispensaries across 4 countries. We operate in Canada, the US, Germany, and the UK. So this is total traffic over the last period of time for the US. I can further break this down by state. So if I want to see just Colorado or just Kansas or Kentucky or whatever, we can do that all the way down to the individual county level. And we can see individual county performance on any of the metrics that we track. And I can do this, as I said, for any of the 4 countries that we operate in. So if I come up to Canada, where we're based, we can see the same kind of thing. And we can further break that down all the way to our postal code regions up here. And in a market like Germany, which is completely a medical CBD market, we can do the same thing and see what traffic looks like all the way down to what they refer to as rural districts to see what the breakdown is there. And one last thing is, in addition to kind of seeing the metrics in terms of movement, we also have a little tool in here that we call POI locations. POI is a fancy location language term that refers to the actual locations that we have in our system, the 12,000 locations I'm referring to. It stands for point of interest. So we have 12,000 points of interest within our database. And what this is a map visualization of all 12,000 or so stores that we track across the 4 countries. And so it's a neat way to visually see the density of store deployment. And so as you can see with these bigger green dots, there's more stores there than there are in some places. Obviously, Colorado, California, markets like that, all the way down to when we see a little tiny blue dot like this means there's one store there in our system. It's a medical store. It's probably not a legal state, that type of thing. And what we've heard from a lot of customers is they see a great way to use our platform for real estate site selection. I was talking to one customer recently who is thinking about adding, 2 or 3 new stores over the course of the year. They're able to look at the data and say, hey, we're talking to our broker. We're looking at 2 different sites right now for our next store. Can we use your platform to analyze the potential performance of those sites based on traffic, based on social conversation, based on real estate, and so on? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, because we can look at performance even of existing businesses as well as future businesses. And from a government perspective, obviously we see all movement, whether that's legal, illegal, and just movement in general to actual businesses or POIs that we track, as well as we showed earlier, the before and after behavior of those of the audience that's coming in. So that's in a nutshell, ground level insights. Thank you for taking the time to listen and to watch, and we hope you're interested in it. We'd love you to contact us if you have further questions or you'd like to sign up to a trial. We'd be happy to get you set up.